Hello everyone and welcome back to the garage. In this video we're going to take care of the rear suspension on the Daytona. Let's see where we're at. So I managed to take almost everything apart, but unfortunately I've lost all the footage. It's all been corrupted, so we're going to start this video from here. Everything came apart eventually, but a lot of things were pretty seized up and needed quite a lot of hammering to take apart, and I still have to take all the bearings out, which is not going to be as straightforward as it should be. And also I spent quite a lot of hours just cleaning. Although it doesn't look like squeaky clean, it isn't yet, but I almost filled one of these baking trays full with just grime I scraped off the bike and the various parts, so it was quite neglected. But yeah, now that I have everything on the table, I'm just going to take one piece at a time and get it ready to be fitted back to the bike. So here we are with the swing arm. It's mostly apart. I've got the swing arm bearings, which I'm going to replace, and they don't look too bad, so I'm hopeful these will come out without too much of a fight. This, on the other hand, this is pretty seized up. I can move it now, but before I could only hammer it back and forth. And these are quite toast. I took one of the sleeves out, but yeah. They're stuck in there, and they've got very deep grooves caused by the corrosion, so definitely need replacing. And this shaft here, that's stuck, but I'll get to that in a bit. For now, let's just try to get these out, because I'm thinking if this is still attached to the big swing arm and I've got something to hold on, it'll make it a bit easier. So let's try that. So you can see here how corroded this inner sleeve is and how deep the grooves are. No wonder it doesn't want to move anywhere. And now I'm just gonna pop out the seals, and even those are surprisingly stuck in there. This isn't a great way to hammer a bearing out, but I thought it's worth a try. But no, it's not going anywhere. Here's the second attempt with a board under it, so a lot more of the energy is going straight into the bearing, but it still doesn't move at all. So yeah, these bearings aren't going anywhere, so I'll just leave this for later. So on this shaft here, you're meant to put an M14 bolt in it, although I think this is the wrong pitch because it doesn't go in quite easily. But M14 is an odd size anyway, so according to the manual you're supposed to thread it in, get a pair of pliers and just gently pull it out, but that's not going to happen. I tried applying heat, penetrating fluid, hold on to it as good as I can, and just hammer both sides, and it just doesn't move. So the plan here is to cut the head off the bolt, put an M10 there so I can attach my slide hammer to it, and hopefully that'll get it out. So this is a pretty strong bolt. It's grade 12.9 I believe, so not the best for turning, but it's what I've got, so I'm going to use it. And I'm going to start by parting the head off, which is quite noisy. Then I'm just going to face the end so it's got a nice finish. And then I'm just going to turn down a section of the outer diameter to just under 10 mil so I can thread an M10 on it. And here we are, cutting the thread. I'm only showing the easy bit at the beginning, but the die really struggled cutting it because the bolt is so hard, but we got there in the end. And yes, I do need to clean all the rust off the lathe, but I've only recently got it, so I didn't manage to do that yet. And here we are, taking the shaft out. Could do with a heavier slide hammer. That shaft doesn't look very happy. But we got there in the end, after a lot of hammering. And now that the drag link is out of the way, I can go ahead and remove the rest of the bearings from the swing arm. So I'm gonna start by removing the little spacer and popping out the seal. I'm also trying not to leave any marks on the aluminium casting, so I'm using a paper towel to protect that. And there it is, that's out. I'm now removing the circlip that retains the bearing, and that extra hand is quite helpful. And now I'm on to the other side, and this is the actual bearing inner race. And it looks a lot worse than I initially thought. I expected it to be quite clean, based on the fact that it was moving easily. Popping the seal out again. So this bearing is pretty stuck in there as well. After quite a bit of hammering and applying some heat as well, but gently not to damage the paint on the casting, it still wasn't moving. So I had to improvise a puller with some packing pieces made out of some aluminium bits I had lying around, and that managed to pull it out eventually. And there we go, it's not looking too bad. And now for the other side. This one came out pretty easy. And there is a second shaft seal on the side with the needle roller bearing. That's because the center of the swing arm is hollow, and although it has a rubber plug, it could potentially get contaminated with all sorts of debris and moisture, so that bearing needs to be protected. So I'm back on the drag link now, giving it a second shot, and I'm starting by removing the seals. And those bearings are really horrible looking, and not surprised they seized up. So hammering won't work very well here, I don't think, so I decided to try to use the puller again, but using the packing pieces like I did on the swing arm won't work very well either. But I found the scrap aluminium bit, and I'm just gonna bore a section of it out slightly larger than the outer diameter of the bearing, and try to pull it into it. And let's give it a shot. It already looks like it's gonna be a struggle. So yeah, they really didn't play nicely, and even applying some heat and WD-40 didn't help, so in the end I just took it with me to work and used the 60-ton press to push the bearings out. The press didn't seem to struggle, however I was quite concerned I'm gonna break the aluminium casting. And now for the last remaining link, which is quite corroded as well. I tried to use a trick from my childhood. When I was really young, in a small Romanian village, where WD-40 wasn't readily available, the trick was to leave parts in water to soften up the rust or corrosion. Let's see if it did any good. So trying to use the same method with the puller, but since it's quite a rusty steel component which I'm gonna have to repaint anyway, I'm a bit more aggressive with the heat, hoping that would make a difference. But no, what happened is I pulled the sides of the bearing with the rollers out, but the actual outer sleeve just stayed there. You can see, however, how worn out it is. On the side I'm looking at right now, sections of it are actually missing. It's so worn out, the rollers were almost digging into the steel housing. It's a good time to replace it. So there's nothing left to grip onto to try to pull the rest of the bearing out. So the plan now is to use a die grinder with a carbide burr and try to make a groove in the outer sleeve. Hopefully that will relieve the stress and allow me to pull it out easier. And that worked a lot better than I expected. It looks like the bearing just cracked and popped out. So I mounted the rear wheel hub or chain adjuster, and although I've done this at a later stage, I've decided to show it now, since in this video I'm just taking things apart. Warming the body up to make the job easier. I've actually done this quite a few times during the process of removing the bearings. I just cut it out during editing to save on time. And there's a little snap ring hiding under the seal on both sides, which needs to be removed. And there we go, it's coming out. And the other side. And I didn't really need to do this. I guess I just wanted to have little rollers flying all over the place. warm up the housing a bit more. And now I'm just going to use a drift to gently hammer the bearings out. I'm also going to be very careful not to damage or scratch the surface of the bore, which is always a risk when using this method. And they are moving out quite easily. And there we go, one of them popped out. And there's the second one. And the inner shaft seal. And there's another circlip in there, if you can see it, which I'm gonna remove, and then I'm gonna hammer the remaining bearing race out. And there it is, job's all done. Now back to some more cleaning. And that's it, we've managed to take all the bearings out, ready for a bit more cleaning and reassembly. And I'm gonna stop this video here. In the next one, we're gonna start putting things back together. So thanks for watching and see you next time. Cheers!